It's a moment right now for the BBC to make the same kind of decision that other media companies have had to make this year. The ones who appear to fold to Trump, like Paramount, the parent company of CBS News, settling with Trump over the summer, they endure a reputational harm.
Look who's talking.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Dronetek, and today we're going to talk about something I don't normally talk about, the BBC. The BBC has long been known to have a left-wing bias, and today they're getting in trouble for it because they put out a deceptively edited video of Donald Trump.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Have been left in ruins.
Good God!
Heads are already rolling, and now Trump is threatening to sue. So who does Channel 4 bring on to defend the BBC? Of all people, BRIAN freaking Stelter.
Good choice.
Let me start with you, Andrew. Lisa and Andy said tonight the BBC is a light on the shining light on the hill. Do you think that light will go out, or is her reassurance enough to keep it flickering?
I think it's the gusts around the light, if I can put it that way, are very, very wild at the moment. This is a really, really dangerous moment, I think, for the BBC. I've just been talking to Katie McFarlane, who was Deputy National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, very close to him. And she thought he was deadly serious about this case. He was going to prosecute it, probably in California, in Florida. He wouldn't necessarily be going for the full $1 billion take, but this is very, even the legal fees here, Matt, are going to be enormous. And I think the pressure on the BBC is going to be intense. I think Trump is deadly serious about going for them. And the problem is, of course, as we both know, right at the moment, there is no real leadership to deal with this.
Indeed. Brian, I mean, you've written about the so-called Trump squeeze. The BBC is in the middle of this Trump squeeze. So just remind us how that works.
It's a moment right now for the BBC to make the same kind of decision that other media companies have had to make this year. Do you fight or do you fold? And this isn't just about media companies. We've seen this at Harvard and other US universities. We've seen this with law firms and other institutions. The ones who fight end up winning. The ones who fight end up usually prevailing. The ones who appear to fold to Trump, like Paramount, the parent company of CBS News, settling with Trump over the summer, they endure a reputational harm. And in the case of Disney suspending Jimmy Kimmel in September, they end up having a big consumer backlash with people canceling subscriptions. So I think one of the factors the BBC board has to think about right now is what the backlash will be if they appear to capitulate to the US president, because it will be severe.
Right. And just on Florida media law, which I don't know much about, but you know more. I mean, I've heard it said that actually if the BBC were to take this, have it stay in court in Florida, it stands quite a good chance of winning.
That is true. Media lawyers believe it would be a strong case for the BBC and a weak case for the president. You'd never know what kind of jury you're going to get, however, and that's true in any state, but particularly in Florida, where depending on what part of the state, you're going to get a very Trump-friendly jury. But most of Trump's cases do not go to trial. And I think it's important to note that most of these letters don't turn into lawsuits. Most of the lawsuits don't prevail for Trump. The New York Times right now is fighting a Trump lawsuit. The Wall Street Journal is fighting a Trump lawsuit. And I would argue that within the media world, those brands have benefited by deciding to fight.
Right. Andrew, if the BBC decides to fold, right, rather than fight, its reputation is shot to pieces, isn't it, around the world?
It'll be terrible because around the world, people will be watching this. Don't forget the BBC is also under attack from Moscow, where the Russian Foreign Ministry has really gone for it over the coverage of Ukraine. The Israeli government and Tel Aviv have gone for the BBC as well. This is a big international story. And to the extent that the BBC is part of how Britain is seen around the world, it affects all of us. It affects Britain's reputation in the world as well. I asked Donald Trump's advisor earlier on whether her advice would be, if the BBC did make a groveling apology, all of that stuff, would that be enough? And she said, absolutely not. This is something that the president feels really strongly about. So I think trying to fold, trying to apologize may well not be enough.
Okay.
And
go on.
the argument the BBC has been making is yes, this was a terrible thing to do. This editing was egregious and the rest of it. But in the end, he was whipping up the crowd. You know, he was very belligerent, and the congressional inquiry also found that he had misbehaved on that day. And therefore, the case they were making, the broader case they were making in that program, was fair. I think that would be that would have to be their main line of defense. But it'd be intensely political and very, very polarizing.
Indeed. Brian, you were trying to come in there.
I'm just making the point that why this matters to Trump so much, right? Anytime he can be perceived to be beating a media outlet, he wants to do that because he wants dominance. He ultimately wants control over the news, although it's important news outlets make sure he doesn't get it. And why does this matter to Trump? Because it's about his innocence. He wants to portray himself as an innocent on January 6th and not as the instigator of a riot. So here we are, almost 5 or 6 years later, and it's still about January 6th.
Look who's talking.
Okay, several things. One, the idea that BRIAN STELTER, of all people from CNN, is talking about the reputational damage to BBC if they fold to Donald Trump is mind-bending. You're talking about a guy and a network who were caught on multiple occasions lying in service of the Democrat Party and Joe Biden. They literally gaslit and deceived the country about the Hunter Biden laptop and Joe Biden's mental decline, amongst many other stories. Speaking of reputational damage, doesn't it do BBC reputational damage to have been caught deceptively editing video?
So I think, for many, many reasons, this is very different.
All right, folks, that's all I have for that one, but I want to know what you all think. Let me know in the comments, and if you're still here, might as well hit that like button and subscribe. I do post on a regular basis, so make sure to keep checking back for more. Thanks a lot.